Hi, it's David O. on a rainy, overcast day here in Karmiel. This is a blessing. It's been raining continuously for the last 3 days, which is very good because we always need rain because we really live in a desert here. Although it's a lush desert because of what the Israelis have been doing over the last 3,000 years. Everything is growing. Water falls on the pavement and it dries almost instantly. And everything rushes up from the ground to be green at this time of year. So although it's December and it's snowing in most of the world, here is the time of great growth in many ways. And speaking of growth, we're into a new book of Torah. We finished Bereshit last week, and now we start the book of Shemot, of Exodus, and the Parsha of Shemot. It really means names. We'll talk about that maybe next year. This year I want to talk about leadership, right? What is leadership, right? Who said this? I'll give you some choices, all right? It could be Richard Nixon, could be Nikki Haley, it could be Golda Meir, A, B, and C. Who said, "Who am I to lead? They won't believe me. I'm not a man of words. Send somebody else." If you said Moshe Rabbeinu, you would have been right. The greatest leader of all time, and certainly the greatest leader of the Jews of all time, said no 4 times to God, to the creator of the universe, when told that he was supposed to lead the Jews. And one might agree that, well, frankly, he was a prophet. In fact, he was the greatest of prophets. And he knew this in advance, that this was not an easy task. In fact, one would argue, an impossible task. Now, I tell you this because this week is not only Parsha Shemot, but as it says, you should live with the Torah of the times, meaning your times and this week's Torah times. So what's special about this week? The Knesset was dissolved. There's no more parliament. And there's an election going on already. So Israel is going to have to choose a new leader. Moshe Rabbeinu is not running on this one, unfortunately. But how did he come to this conclusion? Well, when he was a young man, long before this offer from God to redeem the Jewish people, he came out from his palace and he saw an Egyptian taskmaster beating a Jew. And he killed that person. How he killed it is a big discussion in the Torah, but he killed the taskmaster and saved the life of the Jew. The next day, he came out again, and he saw 2 Jews arguing with each other, and he tried to break up the fight, and they both got upset with him, right? And said to him, "Who appointed you to be judge over us?" Now, this is an interesting thing, because it is the first recorded exchange between Moshe and a Jew in the entire Torah. All right. And more than that, looking back, we know that he was chosen to be a leader and a judge over the Jews. He gave the law to the Jews. But at this moment in history, the last thing Moshe Rabbeinu was thinking was, I'm going to be a judge over the Jewish people. You know, he was a prince of Egypt, and he might sometime be king, but certainly not a simple judge over the Jewish people. So it seemed like a strange question, but it told him what the future had in mind. Now, when he was standing at the burning bush, in this week's Parsha, God, or the second time, God persuaded him. He actually, I don't think he persuaded him, he actually ordered him to lead, right? And he did it very reluctantly. And I think the sign of leadership, especially of the Jewish people, is somebody who doesn't strive for it, but rather somebody who accepts it as an obligation, maybe even as a burden, but something that he has to do. That the best explanation of why the Jews are so difficult to lead comes from a very strange source. Korach rebelled against the leadership of Moshe Rabbeinu, the leadership the priestly leadership of his brother Aaron, of the leadership of his cousin of the tribe of Levi. And he said, this is my reason. You've gone too far, Moshe Rabbeinu. You've set yourself above the Jewish people. Who are you? There's an airplane going above, sorry. He said, who are you? Right? The whole community of the Jewish people is holy to God. Every one of them. And the Lord is with every one of them. Why then do you set yourself above the Lord's assembly? An amazing statement, and yet I would argue that what Korach was saying was right. Not for the right reasons. He was a demagogue. But he actually was describing the main issue of leadership of the Jewish people. Jewish people are described as a stiff-necked people. I've often thought that was a backhanded compliment, right? But if you're a stiff-necked people, you don't bow easily. Your spine is too stiff, right? The prophets wouldn't bow down to the kings. Mordechai wouldn't bow down to Haman. The Maccabees refused to bow to the Greeks. And so it was through history. We don't bow very easily. It makes us hard to conquer. But it also makes us very, very hard to lead. And that's our history. Jews are a nation of very strong individuals. You know, every one of them has a view. What's the expression? 2 Jews, 3 opinions, right? Not only that, but they'll fight for all 3 opinions at any given moment. So I'll leave you with one more quote, and I'll tell you who said it. There was a moment when Golda Meir was prime minister. So that's your hint. She is the one who said it. All right, I blew this story, right? But Nixon was explaining how difficult it is for his role as leader of the American people. And he told her that, Mrs. Meir, you have to understand, my decisions are not my own. I'm the leader, I'm the president of 150 million Americans. And Golda always very quickly said, you, Mr. President, may be the president of 150 million Americans. I am the prime minister of 6 million presidents. And so it is. Now we're in an election to find a leader of Israel. The same leader we have, a new leader. Who knows who it will be? It's too early to tell. The election is just prior to Pesach. The campaigns have just begun. We hope that God gives us the wisdom to choose a proper leader of the Jewish people and of Israel. Thank you very much. It's David Ostriker, Parsha Shemot from Karmiel, and I'm going to get inside before it starts raining again. Be well. Shabbat Shalom.